So, oh.
You're all good.
Sounds good. So yeah, my family owns Record Family Wines. We have a vineyard up in Paso Robles on the Central Coast, and we sell the majority of our fruit to other Paso wineries and just keep our favorite blocks, sometimes our favorite rows for our own label. So a very small production, less than 1,000 cases a year, and all direct to consumer. So you're not going to find us in, Vaughn's or any of those big retailers. It's just we're not big enough for that. So, but the good news is that we've now come to San Diego and opened a tasting room. So you can enjoy all of these wines without making the 5+ hour drive up to Paso. So that's exciting for us. And we have a long history of agriculture in Southern California. My sister and I are 4th generation farmers. Technically, she's the farmer. She's our vineyard manager, and she works on the production side. So we, a lot of my family went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and when going through the ag program, and when we were getting, close to the end of our school days, when we talked about joining, the family farming operation, we weren't really interested in the carrots and potatoes and onions and alfalfa that my dad had been growing. But we had grown to love the wine and wine industry while at Cal Poly, and eventually convinced him that that's a direction that we'd like to move to, and to continue on that farming legacy. So that's kind of how we transitioned from row crops, dairy, from past generations to the wine industry. So my sister is our vineyard manager. She lives up in Paso and, just covers day-to-day operations. She works with the wineries that we grow fruit for. And sometimes we argue about how much fruit I can keep for our label. But it's been really fun. So we both have a history of working in the wine industry before joining the family business. So which I think is important to kind of get a feel for the industry, as a whole, and hopefully we can bring the best of our knowledge to the farming operation. So that's a little bit about the family. One thing I'll mention, because you don't have an actual bottle in front of you, I'll show you our label.
Right on.
A little blurry, but basically it's the silhouette is of my mom, myself, and my sister, to kind of pay homage to the role that women have always played in our family's agricultural history. So yeah, that's a little bit about us. And I'm excited to go through each of the wines with you as we try them with the cheese and see how they pair and what you guys like.
I got a question for you. So when you guys were starting out in the wine business, did you guys already have grapes set up growing already, or was it something you had to start brand new? And how long does that take from starting brand new to?
Yeah, good question. So we purchased our vineyard in 2007, and it was it had about 25 acres of vines planted to it. And most of those have reached the end of their life cycle. So since 2007, we have pulled out a lot of vines to replace with, clean vines, younger vines. And then we've also developed another 25 acres and started that from scratch, putting in irrigation and trellis system and everything. So a little bit of both. When we purchased the vineyard in 2007, it was planted to Merlot, Syrah, and Grenache. The Grenache is those are the only vines that are still on the vineyard today when we purchased it. All the Merlot is gone. We've replaced it with Cab. We've added Viognier and Sauvignon Blanc as well. So we'll have another white soon in the lineup. So that's exciting for the tasting room, especially.
Yeah.
And as far as how long it takes, at least 3 years to get some fruit off of the vines, but really it's a good 4 seasons before you can get, you know, a sizable enough crop to actually harvest and make wine. So it's a process.
Yeah, it's actually it's quicker than I thought. I have a little bit of history in tequila, and I'm like, that takes like 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's that long. No, that's great then.
Yeah, that's about the lifetime of a vine, I would say, is about 30 years, give or take. I mean, there's some old vines still in production, but typical lifespan of a vine is anywhere from 20 to 30 years or so. But what's so interesting too about wine is that you know, once you harvest it from that year, then you still don't see the finished product for another, you know, few months, up to, you know, 18 months, 24 months, even for reds. So, you know, you might plant something 1 year, you have to wait 4 years to get a good crop, and then it's in the cellar, you know, for another at least 1.5 years before being released. So it's a just the inventory tracking between bulk wine and bottled wine is it's a job.
Okay, yeah, I guess. I think it's a smart move though, selling the grapes. Like that's just a cool like
started
side
making wine actually because when we purchased the vineyard, none of the grapes had contracts. So we were trying to sell in the spot market and it was really rough. And so we decided, well, let's make a couple barrels so we can take those out to our neighbors and say, hey, look, this is what our vineyard can produce. You know, are you interested in buying some grapes from us? So that's just kind of how it started, and kind of a backwards way to start. I mean, ideally, you sit down and write a business plan, but you know, we just bought some barrels and made some wine. So it's exciting to see how far we've come. So
yeah, it's awesome. All right, let's get into it. So you want to talk about the first wine?
Yeah, so the first wine that we have in the tasting kit is our 2018 Viognier. It was the only white that we had planted. We've just got 2 acres of this wine. And it's a really fun wine for us. We prefer our whites on a crisper, more acidic side. So we harvested this a little bit earlier than I would say is the norm for Viognier, but I really like the acidity that is in there. It's a great food wine. And I just like that you still have those wonderful floral aromatics, some honeysuckle or orange blossom. I even get, and then you get, instead of the ripe fruit, you're getting more like stone fruit or young fruit on the palate, I think. So I like the brightness, the acidity that is maintained in the Viognier.
Yeah, it's nice and crisp. So with this, we're actually going to pair that Kunik. So I actually picked
one of our favorites in the tasting room.
I was gonna say 2 of these cheeses are her, like some of her favorite cheeses. So one of them happens to be this Kunik. So this is from a farm called Nettle Meadow Farm or Nettle Meadow Dairy in New York. And they specialize in a lot of cow and goat blends, some sheep as well. But this is their tried and true cheese. This is what kind of made them famous. And the wheel is actually called a button wheel. So they have like 2 different names depending on the size of the wheel. And they make this also in an amber Kunik, which is washed in a whiskey. So with this, it's a mixture of cow and goat. So when you have something nice and light and crisp like this, it is kind of nice because you have that acidity to it a little bit, to have a little bit something creamy. So we did something creamy and tangy at the same time with that goat milk. So it will have a little bit of like that fattiness film to it, a little bit of tang, a little bit of earthiness around the rind when you get to the edge, and you can totally eat this rind. I love this cheese. It's like everything you want in triple cream and everything you want in like a soft goat mixed together, and not one outshining the other. So that's kind of why we picked that one.
I've always wondered, is it common for cheese producers to blend milks, or is that unique to this cheese, or is it, a smaller percentage of cheeses?
Yeah, it's very common. So I guess it's similar to wine, in which they blend according to help out with fat contents and flavor. So like a goat milk has more fat than cow's milk. So that's going to completely change the taste and even texture of the cheese because of that. But no, they've been doing that for a long time. Like there's certain cheeses that are 100% one, 100% another, but people are now having more fun with it and are like, yeah, let's add like 20% of this, 10% of this. We have it all at the shop, at the farm anyway, so why not just do it? What are everyone's thoughts on the wine and cheese?
I think it's a great blend of that creaminess with the crisper white wine. I like it a lot. And I have to say, it probably makes me sound like an amateur, but I don't typically like the rind of a brie so much, but I love this.
Yeah, it's like every cheese class we teach, that's probably the number one question people ask is, can you eat the rind? And my answer every time is, as long as it's edible, you can eat it. It's all up to like the person. If someone doesn't like rind, they don't like rind, and that is perfectly fine. But I always say go for it, just due to the fact that you can actually, this cheese is kind of a perfect example. You see when like the cheese ripens, it ripens from the outside in. Mm-hmm. So when that's happening, it's creating this is called a bloomy rind. It's creating this rind, and that way the interior is a little bit firmer. So when you taste something here and you taste something here, it's so different. So I always say, when you ever eat cheese, you eat rind to rind instead of going like, it's almost like taking the middle brownie out of the sheet tray. Like, like, yeah, this middle part is gonna be awesome, but like everything else, when you add it all together, is gonna create something really beautiful. So,
Nate, what's the jelly? Is it?
Oh, it's a sour cherry jam from American Spoon.
Amazingly well with the Kunik and the wine. That's spot on. I already got into it.
Thank you. And actually, we put some Rainer cherries on here too, because we figured these would actually all fit pretty well in there too. So
we're happy to see those, because we've actually been serving them in the tasting room the last couple of weeks on our cheese and meat plate. So yeah,
perfect.
We're on the page.
All right. All right. What's next?
So the next wine is going to be our 2019 Syrah Rose. Go ahead and pour a splash of that. We make two different rosés, or we made two different rosés in 2019. A Grenache rosé, which is really light and just almost a little too easy to drink sometimes on a warm day on the patio. And then we made the Syrah rosé. A Syrah rosé is much darker in color, I think, than even your typical rosé that you find at the store might be. And our winemaker made this wine with red wine drinkers in mind. So it sat on the skins a lot longer, so it's going to have those bolder flavors. And I'm interested to see how it pairs with the Seascape, because I almost feel like this wine has more of a creamier, or some might call like an oilier texture to it compared to our other rosé. But this has been really popular in the tasting room. We made about 70 cases of this wine, so probably won't be around after this summer, but it's just a really fun wine, perfect for like barbecues when you don't want to bring out a big red, if it's, you know, just too warm, like this is a perfect wine for that kind of situation.
Yeah. Actually, just ate a Marcona almond and tried that. And it's, when you said oily, it's like, there's a little bit like almost fattiness in it. That's really nice. Yeah. So we picked the Seascape. So something definitely with cheese and wine that we always like to talk about is terroir. So the idea that what grows together goes together. So the cool thing about this is this cheese is actually made in Paso Robles. So it's not made far from each other. So there is a theory of, all right, if they're made in the same area, things tend to go together, or at least will contain similar kind of qualities to them. This is made by Central Coast Creamery. And this guy, the owner, Reggie, this is one of his favorite cheeses. It's their take almost on a cheddar cheese. So I like this for this one because there is a little bit of bite, like a little bit of oiliness, a little bit of bite. Like there's a lot of flavor in this, and it's really nice. And I almost like the cheddar aspect because it's going to be a little bit sharp, but it's more tangy because it's also a mixture of cow and goat. So it has that tanginess. I always say this almost is like the most snackable cheese that we sell. I remember I was running errands one day, had a little nub of this in my car, and I got out of the grocery store and just ate it. And I was like, this is the most satisfying thing ever. So for me, it can have like a cooling quality in a weird, like a lactic sour creamy cooling quality because of that mixture of the two milks. And usually with like rosé, they kind of go hand in hand, like the lactic part of that. I like it.
I think it's a great pairing.
Yeah, it's
kind of brings up the best of both the wine and the cheese.
And that's the fun part, is like everyone, like you have to, when you're making cheese, you have to use salt. So sometimes you even have a touch of salt in the cheese, like a little extra salt in the cheese, brings out a ton more flavor, even in the wine, that you're not getting right off the palate. It kind of one, yeah, as you were saying, one helps the other. So these were a big fan of this combo.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you guys think?
I agree. I think that like you say, almost that viscous, that oiliness, they really pair well, especially with the Marcona almond.
I hear you. That almond is, so those Spanish almonds, they roast them and then toss them in sunflower oil and salt. And so, yeah, those two together like are really nice, and it almost makes the almond even more meaty to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. I'm like actually having a barbecue this weekend, and I'm like, all right, like, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
We like to refer to like wines like this, or like the other one, the Grenache, the Grenache rosé you're talking about, is porch pounders.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you sit down, you're in a rocking chair having a good time, and all of a sudden you look over and the whole thing's gone.
Need another bottle.
Yeah. All right. All right. So last but not least.
Yes, our 2017 Reserve Cab. So we made 50 cases of this in 2017. We harvested more than what we bottled for the Reserve label. But what we did was, when we were doing blending trials for our blended wines, our Genesis and Randy's Red, we picked out our favorite barrels from this vintage to bottle under our Reserve label. So 50 cases is about 2 barrels. And so then everything else we put into our Genesis blend. And so we have a lot of cab at the vineyard, but there's one block in particular in our newer development, we call it Block 8. And for some reason, we just all love the fruit that comes from that block. It's a tiny block, and I don't know what is special about it. The row orientation is the same as the other blocks in that area. Oil profile is very similar. There might be a small difference, but we just all love that block. And my sister takes extra special care of it, I find. So it was interesting to go through and because when our winemaker processes the fruit and puts it into barrel, he keeps track of, where the fruit was. So we harvested some from another area that's on terraces in a different part of the vineyard. And then we harvested some from block 8. And for 2017, we just wanted to see what's the difference. What do we like the best? And it was block 8. So that's what went into our reserve cab. So it's a little bit about the vineyard aspect of it anyway.
Do you guys ever have moments of like, because I know you blend certain grapes together that like it just doesn't pan out?
Yeah, I mean, we'll sit down, and when you sit down to blend,
Yeah,
you have like, well, this would be the ideal blend on paper because this is what the fruit that we have. So, if it tastes good, like that's a good direction to go, but it doesn't always. And so you have to make tweaks. And so fortunately our winemaker loves, the science behind, winemaking, and he'll get, when he starts blending, it's down to, 10th of percentages, and to really come up with the best blend for that particular vintage. So he'll come up with his top 3 blends and then, present them to us, and we'll sit down and we'll taste through them. This year was on Zoom. And he says, okay, if we go with this blend, this is what your production looks like for all of the other wines. If we go with this, and so through each of them, now which one is your favorite? And can we make that work for the rest of your wine program? So, we kind of go at it, there's 2 different approaches, and we try to, obviously we want to use all of the wine that is made for that particular vintage, but it's got to taste good too.
Yeah. Well, this tastes really good. Yeah, I was always curious about that because I'm like, I hear what you're saying. It's a kind of a cool thought about like on paper. I don't know how many times I've written menus where I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to taste great. And then you make it, you're like, this is not good. Like, let's scratch everything about this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we paired this one. This happens to be one of my favorite cheeses. It's called Persille Rambouillet. So I did some research on this. It just means it is Persille refers to the veining of this cheese. So this is a goat's milk blue cheese coming from Rambouillet, France, which is just a little southwest of Paris, like just on the outskirts of Paris. It is like famous people who have stayed there, like Napoleon and Louis XIV and everything like that. But the fun part about this cheese is it is a rarity that we get a lot of goat blue cheeses. Mm-hmm. And I am 100% on the train of why don't we make more of these? Because it has that awesome soft goat texture, but it does have that nice like mold of blue cheese in there that just like adds that almost earthy kind of quality to it. And because of the fat and because of like the pungency of that, I love like the cab, and like this to me is like I'm like curled up next to a fire having like a glass of wine and a little this to end the night. And it's just so good. Like I don't know, at work I cut this up, cut a little bit of like smoked beef salami, and just quietly sit in a corner and not talk to anybody for a bit. But we just figured that and like, so like traditional technique when you see this around the rind, so that is actually just vegetal ash. Mm-hmm. So some of it is actually blue mold and not like that's inoculated there, but the other part in the classic way of preserving goat's milk cheese is they burn vegetables down. They take that ash and then they coat the outside of the cheese as a preservation technique. And we were talking a couple of weeks ago to the people who make cheese at Old Chatham Creamery in New York. And they were saying it also like messes a little bit with like pH balances a little bit. So it helps certain ripening processes and brings out certain other characters as well. I just knew they would use it so bugs wouldn't go near it, and it would also protect from like moisture or anything like that. But this is, to me, like such a good blue cheese and good introductory blue cheese for people who say they hate blue cheese.
I love the creaminess of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting to taste the wine first and then have the cheese and taste the wine again. And just the earthy notes of the wine just kind of are overwhelming at that point. It's so interesting how it kind of changes, but I like it.
Yeah, it's like there's so much the wine is so rich and like it's like a nice warm blanket, if you will. Like that, like it's kind of nice to have that goat milk tart tang to like pop it up a little bit. It almost like adds a little speed bump in there, but they play nicely together, especially if you put a little bit of that sour cherry jam on there. It'll bridge that sweetness gap, or like a little bit of honey does the same thing. But yeah, I am definitely a fan. Yeah, I love this pairing.
It's a really good, because a lot of blue cheeses are just too overpowering.
Yeah.
And you don't taste anything else that you're tasting. And this, like you say, is a good introduction to people that think they don't like blue cheese, because it's there, but it's not.
Yeah.
So it's just a good, mild kind of blue cheese. And yeah, but it doesn't overpower the wine, but it holds its own. So it's a great pairing. You guys did a good job.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like Chili's and like any steakhouse really ruined the blue cheese in the mind of consumers. Like everyone's used to the bagged like cubes, like chunks of blue cheese that have been cryovac.
Right.
Well, then it's like all right, let's put a like living, breathing organism in a cryovac bag. Like, so it's just gonna get really weird and like almost like moldy in a way where it shouldn't be moldy. Like it's just not good.
The wrong kind.
Yeah, exactly. So like I don't know, myself, like I liked blue cheese, but I never really appreciated all that much. So I started getting more and more into cheese. And you can like, it's with anything, like you can go the realm of like, man, this is really intense, to man, this is very light and kind of beautiful and earthy. Some of them are chocolatey. Other ones are really like lemony and citrusy. And it's all dependent on where they're from and like, again, what the cows are eating or what the goats are eating or anything like that. And just even if they're blended, I don't know. I think it's so fascinating to me. Like the other crazy thing is a couple years ago in Bend, Oregon, Rogue Creamery, they had a blue cheese that won best cheese altogether in the world. So it was crazy to have it to be an American cheese one, and really crazy to have it to be a blue cheese where it's like no one thought it was happening. And so now it's like the hardest cheese to get, even as people who own a cheese shop. Like it's hard for us to get, but it's very easy for us to sell. So
you know when you have it in stock, because
yeah.
I'll never be able to consume blue cheese like from the store again.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's actually soaked in wine leaves.
Oh, really?
So when you get to that rind, it's like really kind of like luscious and fruity and gets there. And then like everything else is just kind of rich and nutty. Very good. It's like, I don't know. I feel like wine, cheese, like all depends on the year, all depends on the batch, but all depends on like the care people take in making it. Because as easy or as like minimal ingredients go into each one, it's all about technique and wisdom and knowledge of knowing what you're doing and care of doing those extra right steps to produce things where it's like wine is one thing, like cheese is four things, like charcuterie is 2 or 3 things. Like it's just kind of wild to me.
But
Yeah.
none
And what I like to say about wine is that you can't make good wine from bad grapes,
Yeah.
and I feel like the same thing goes for cheese. Like you start with those good ingredients, the good products to start with, and that's really important in the final product.
Yeah, it's crazy. We were talking to this cheesemaker. He's saying how they like during the winter, because they're up in upstate New York, and during the winter they have a temperature controlled barn and they play music all day, and like so the goats at no point are like ever, yeah, they're like, hey, like we're all good here. And yeah, but it affects like it hormonally, like if an animal's stressed out, that's why you get really, he was regarding goat cheese too, is like that's where you get really goaty goat cheeses that people don't like, is because they're stressed when they're trying to get milked. And so he's like, I just try to make it a Club Med there, like everyone's relaxed, having a good time.
I love that.
Yeah.
Nate, do you think we'll be seeing more goat blue cheeses? I mean, I feel like goat cheese in general has taken off in popularity lately.
Yes.
So this is just maybe the tip of the wave.
I agree, because the other reason why is people with lactic issue or like lactose issues, there's a lot less lactose in goat's milk. So it's on the rise for that account too. So you're seeing more like goat cheddars are a big thing now.
Wow.
And they're very fun and interesting. But yeah, I think it's the new interesting kind of development. The other one, like sheep, is kind of getting there, but goats are great for the fact that they can produce so much milk. Like they're the second largest producer of milk in animals. Like, so it's cow, goat, sheep, and then water buffalo. And that's like also how the fat content works. The less milk they produce, the higher fat content. So, and there's also like different breeds of goat in which some produce higher fat, some produce more milk. And so they're now like having different breeds on the farm. That way they're almost producing their own perfect blend of butter fats to make together. But I agree, because you're seeing more in the grocery store goat milk, goat butter, like goat yogurts, all that stuff, and it's delicious.
I like that trend.
Yeah, I'm all for it. They are a bit of a pain to handle, but yeah, they're great. What was everyone's favorite pairing so far, if you can put them down?
I like the last pairing, the blue cheese and the
Yeah.
I mean, and it was a perfect progression. And now it's like I don't want to go back to the beginning yet. I need to wait for a while and do a repeat. But but like I said, I think you guys did an amazing job of pairing each cheese with each wine. It's just a great.
I'm a sucker for a blue cheese, so you had me at the end.
You did it.
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah, well, this is nice. It's like a nice intimate class, and yeah, I think we're gonna try to do some more of these, and hopefully we can try to do some more record family classes, because the wine is delicious and it pairs so well with so many great things. Any questions you have for either one of us?
I just want to get on your list for when you get that special cheese from Oregon.
It's in the fall. You're first on the list. It's I think it's a cool $48 a pound.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's
Probably learning that in the tasting room.
yeah.
Trisha,
That's
that'll be
a
for you and I.
private, like no one touches.
Yeah, let me know, Trisha, and I'll come in.
Wine club member, event kind of thing. That could be fun.
Oh yeah.
You know, or family only.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll let you guys all know when it comes in, and they actually started making a reserve version of it, which is like when they showed a picture of it, it was like blue cheese butter, like it was so ripe. I can't even imagine how much that costs. It's probably literally liquid gold. Well, it was a pleasure to have you guys in this tasting. Thank you again, Trisha. This is awesome.
Thank you. And we love all of your recommendations and working with you guys. So yeah, and I'm always open to suggestions too, new interesting cheeses that you think will have. I mean, can't go wrong with the Kunik at Seascape, but a while too. So I would love blue. We'll have to get that on the menu soon.
Hey, absolutely. Well, thank you guys again. Definitely stay posted to our rest of our classes. And if you want to get more of these cheeses, we have plenty in Mission Hills. So we have plenty there. And then we're going to try to get some more like in-person classes out there for you.
Do you have these in Del Mar too?
These ones?
Mm-hmm.
Most likely the Seascape.
Okay.
The other two, I don't know. But if you contact us, we can have them brought up to Del Mar for you.
Okay. Or I can pick them up when I go to work, one of the two.
Apples, oranges. Yeah.
That works too.
If you're picking up there, you might as well sweep by the wine shop, grab some of that too. Yeah.
I work there.
Oh, well then.
So on my way there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. And this was awesome. Thank you, Trisha. This is great.
Great.
All right. Bye.
Good night.